Good day, Dr. Allens. Today, we Group 2 will talk about machine learning use case in industries. So let me start with the introduction part. Machine learning is an artificial intelligence enabling machines to predict outcome based on given dataset. Various industries such as science, technology, and commerce are adopting machine learning. It is because predictions based on machine learning processes can be used widely for marketing, production, human resources management, and many others. Our work explores how machine learning can be applied to improve human resources management in real business by simulations in RapidMiner. It focuses on employee turnover rate in the IT industry, where manpower is the core resource. Meanwhile, in other industries, natural resources such as land, gas, water, or artificial hardware such as machines and buildings are the most important and biggest factor to lead to outcome. However, in IT, human resource and computing power is the only factor that leads to production. And also, since IT industry is growing really fast, turnover rate of employees is higher than other industries, making human resources management even harder. So now Gwen will explain about benefits and limitations of machine learning.
As Hansu mentioned, employee attrition is the major problem that IT industry has been experienced. As a solution, machine technology has both benefits and limitations. Obviously, developing a predictive model to solve particular problems as employee turnover is the primary benefit of machine learning implementation. Therefore, a company can monitor and intervene a real-time turnover for their employees. And in the long term, by understanding the right factors from HR dataset, a company can retain and motivate its current employees with a high satisfaction and performance. It also helps a company build and blend its future HR strategy and solutions. However, regarding the limitations, data bias is the serious issue for machine learning system. Choosing a right input data is generally difficult and challenging due to its complexity. It also requires significantly efforts and investments to collect and summarize. Additionally, people around the world are raising their awareness for protecting their private information, so a company can face another issue if they use the sensitive personal data such as gender and sexuality from their employees. So to sum up, machine learning technology brings benefits in the HR management for an organization, but it's also important to take care of and use data bias. Now, I will demonstrate the process of developing machine learning.
So for this project, we will use the trend modeling with its template, which can be located under here, to predict whether an individual will leave the company or not based on some specific criteria. So we will import the data we need to analyze using this import data function. So we just pointing the program to the location of the data. In here, you can change the data type for each column. So for example, the column left and promotion are set to integer by default. But however, as you can see, this column contains two different values, which is 0 and 1. So we want to change them to binomial. And the remaining columns have three different values. So polynomial is fine. Let me just click it and we save it in here. So in the first step, we will, by pointing the program into the location of the data you just import, it will retrieve the data and then use it to do the analysis. And in step 2, it consists of two processes, which the first one is used to determine the criteria that need to be predicted. And in our case, the left column are chosen because we want to predict whether an individual want to leave the company or not. And for the second process, it is converting numerical to binomial. However, the data type of the left column is already changed to binomial in the previous step. So we don't need this step, we just delete it. Move on to the step 3, which is the cross-validation process. So this helps estimate the accuracies of our model. So in this process, it has two sub-processes, which is sample and decision tree. So by putting set a breakpoint after the set row process and try to run the program, we can see that the distribution of the value 1 and 0 in the left column is not even. So this will cause a bias in our result. Therefore, we will use the sample process in here to adjust the ratio. So in here, we will want to change these two classes into 1 and 0 because the left column only contains these two values. And for the ratio, we want to adjust it in a way that it will make the distribution even. So in here, we will go with 1 for the value 1 and 0.35 for the value 0. And then we put the breakpoint after. Take the breakpoint after, set them off, and then try to run it again, see the result. So as you can see, the distribution of these two values is even now. And then for the second process, sub-processes of cross-validation, we stick with decision tree because we think this model is applicable as it allows us to predict the binomial criteria. And in our case, this means predicting whether an individual will leave the company or not. And now that we show you the results of our model and explain how we fix the data.
Okay, let's see how we applied this process to the data on employee turnover that we had. And before we're going to run the process, we'll have a look at the initial data that we used. So we had a data sheet with 15,000 lines, so 14,999 data sets and 10 different criteria for each of them. And we're going to have a quick look at what those criteria mean. So the first column is satisfaction level, and that is an indicator of how satisfied the employee is with his or her work environment or work situation. The value type, therefore, is a real number ranging from 0 to 1. 0 in this case means that the employee is very unsatisfied with the situation, and 1 means that that person is fully satisfied. Looking at the next column, last evaluation is an indicator of how good or bad this employee was evaluated lately. In this case, we're looking at the same type of value. So again, it's a real number from 0 to 1. 0 means the performance was evaluated as very poor, and 1 means the performance was evaluated as very good. Average monthly hours is an integer that shows us how many hours the employee has worked per month in average. Also, time spent company is an integer showing us how many years the employee has spent with the company already. Work accident is a binomial value indicating us whether during this time with the company, whether there has been a work-related accident involving this employee or not. 0 in this case means there have been no accidents, and 1 means there has been at least 1 accident previously. Column F is entitled left, and this is the column that we're trying to predict. This indicator is binomial as well. So we have a 0 and a 1. 0 means the employee has not left, and 1 means that the employee has left before. And this is the value we want to predict with our decision tree. Column G says promotion last 5 years. And that indicates through a binomial value as well, whether the employee has been promoted within the last 5 years within that company. 0 means there was no promotion, 1 means there was at least 1 promotion. Department is a polynomial value. And for each line, it indicates which department the employee is currently working on. There are a number of departments as you would find them in companies. Lastly, we have the column salary, which again is a polynomial value with only 3 different options, which give us an indication whether the salary this employee is on is high, low, or medium. So let's go back to RapidMiner and see the result when we feed this process with that data set that we have just had a look at. So for this purpose, we're going to load the according data set, which is this one. We'll load it and we will run it. And this gives us a decision tree, which is good so far. But when we look at it in its entire size, we see a very, very big decision tree with loads of leaves and loads of branches. However, when we look at the performance, we can see that overall we have an accuracy of almost 98%, which is, in the first instance, very good. What is relevant for us is to predict those people that leave, so that that company in this case could do something about it and could retain them. So what we are looking at is the recall class for true 1. So how precisely can we predict those who actually leave? This is the relevant value for us. And this score is currently at almost 93%, which is a very high score. However, if we go back to the decision tree, we can see that this decision tree is not easy to use. Loads of different branches, loads of different leaves, which those boxes are called, which makes it very hard to use. And it is very unlikely that such a complex decision tree will be used in a real world scenario, especially not when the people, the staff who uses that tree is not skilled in this machine learning prediction, which presumably HR employees are not. For this reason, there's a need to change. We need to simplify this decision tree. And in our case, there are 2 options. When we look at it closely, we see that we have a lot of different steps in that branch. So that means we have a lot of criteria that make this process longer and longer. So one option is to reduce the criteria, and by that, make the decision tree more compact. Also, we can see that, especially for the real numbers, individual criteria have been broken down into different sections. For example, for the satisfaction level, it could be if it's lower than 0.2, then we go on this branch. If it's greater than 0.2 but lower than 0.4, then we go to another one. So it breaks it up a lot, and it creates different branches, which leads to complexity as well. For this reason, we've made 2 changes to our initial data set, which is 1, we removed criteria that did not seem to be that relevant. And in a second step, we changed our value types from real numbers, where we had loads of different options, to polynomials. And how that looks like, we're going to see now. So from 10 initial criteria, we went down to 6. And in those 6, we only have polynomial and binomial values, meaning that the options are a lot less, since for the polynomial, we only differentiate between high, low, and medium, and the binomial remain as 0 and 1. Looking at those criteria, we now have the satisfaction level. The meaning of this criteria has not changed, only that we have categorized it into 3. So we have split the range from 0 to 1 into 3 equal parts and allocated the values that we have found previously to either low, medium, or high. The same has happened to last evaluation. For number of projects, which used to be an integer, as well as for average monthly hours, we have taken the range that we found in the previous sheet and grouped that into 3 ranges as well: low, medium, and high. The column left has obviously not changed because it was binomial and we're using that the same way. Same thing applies to promotion within the last 5 years. The remaining 4 values criteria we have removed, as from an in-depth analysis of the previous decision tree, we identified them as less relevant. So let us have a look at how our decision tree changes after those changes that we have made. And therefore we're gonna load the new data set, which is this one. And we're gonna run the process again and have a look at the decision tree. And this time we can see that the decision tree is significantly less complex. We have less branches and we have less leaves, which make it a lot easier to go through to use decision tree in order to predict whether people will leave or not. And we can also see that in our performance matrix. The overall accuracy has reduced to roughly 91%, which is still considered as a high value. Looking at the class recall score for true one, which is how well we are able to predict those who are actually going to leave, we are now at a value at 83.5%, which means a reduction by roughly 9% compared to the initial one. But yet, we are able to predict 4 out of 5 people who will leave with this decision tree, which can now be applied by users that are non-experts in machine learning-based churn modeling. And therefore, for 4 out of 5 people who will leave, we can identify it before they leave and presumably prevent that they will churn and that they will resign from their role. Now, Dian is going to talk about a review and a general view on the topic.
Okay, and my part is the evaluation. The application of machine learning is the process that requires steps from collecting data, analyzing data to refine the suitable element, and the program that company to develop to reduce employee turnover. Therefore, the machine learning will be accessed based on these 3 steps. The first one is the data collecting process. The machine learning is fitted by the data that human resources management can collect from the past operation of a company. The data must be collected over many periods to be sufficient for implementing the churn model, and the value of data must be assured to be 0-fold. There are various combinations of factors that can be utilized for the effort of mitigate the employee turnover. For example, some studies have indicated a combination of age, salary, over a job satisfaction, and staff perception. On the other hand, other articles also stress the importance of job performance, job characteristics, individual demographic, and geographical factors. Therefore, the human resources management of the company must be sufficient, flexible, consistent, and qualified in terms of data collection to support for the machine learning exercise. Therefore, the engineering test for data standards is an important requirement for a company. Secondly, is the refining data process. After the data is collected sufficiently from human resources management, the selection layer will be developed to keep only the most relevant element among many elements from the human resources management to implement the churn modeling in machine learning. This means some less relevant component will be eliminated from the model to manage the complexity of the learning. This step will determine the accuracy, efficiency, simplicity of the model. Therefore, the process of refining data must be accessed by the methods such as we have two methods. The first one can be used is the mutual information method. And the second method can be the theater filtering method. In this context, there are some elements that will not be taken into account, which are time spending in the company, work accident, department, and the salary. And the third one is the company program and policies. The machine learning will only help a company to predict the individual would have a higher probability to leave a company based on the text element. However, the specific action that can actually mitigate the turnover of employees in the program that are built by the company to attempt retaining the employee in the workforce. For example, the company that can apply AI in human resources system to determine and understand skill sets based on data of tasks completing of employee, educational costs accomplished, and ranking earned to enable a manager to direct an employee to the future opportunities. Thank you for your listening.